But when I think about the future, I immediately start to fear several things. Number one, I'm getting old. I sometimes am very overwhelmed with all of the work that I have to do, and that I do, you know? And I'm thinking, 54 years old, how am I going to do this in the future? When am I going to be able to retire? You know, I was a lieutenant in the NYPD, and I did 20 years, and why didn't I just stay? I should have just stayed. Why did I leave? Now I have to still work. See, so I'm future, past, future in the past, not in the present. And that's where the fear comes, right? And the regret and the resentment. A lot of my fear oftentimes is around security, financial stuff. Am I going to have enough? Is there going to be enough? Do we have enough time? I always worry about time too. Is there enough time? I don't have enough time for everything. Future thinking. You know, the ultimate fear, of course, like in Sedona, was fear of death. I mean, that is the ultimate fear. I'm reading this new book, Awakening the Buddha Within. It's an amazing book by Lama Das, and he says here, for most of us, there is no greater fear than the fear of death. It's difficult to believe that an easy acceptance of the possibility of death can help put joy in the life you are living. In other words, we are gonna die. Like, we know that. In fact, that's what the Buddha, one of the first awarenesses in the first noble truth of the Buddha. He recognized that because he saw someone aging, and then he saw someone die. So death is definitely going to happen, right? It's my ultimate fear. But what I recognized from what happened in Sedona and that little climb, that off-road experience, is that, you know, my spiritual journey involves going beyond my fears and stepping into what's called unknown territory, an off-road experience involving steep climbs and terrifying heights and valleys. Have those days? The funk, the valley day. I have them sometimes. I wake up for no apparent reason and feel like a little depressed. It's a valley, right? And then there's amazing vistas. The message for me was to continue to move forward. See, because if we got crippled at that climb, if we stopped, and if Andrew listened to me, stop, don't go. Let me out here, I'll get a cab, you know. If Andrew had listened to me and stopped and did not move forward, we would not have gotten to that amazing vista. When I'm in the grip of fear, when things are the most painful, when I'm not seeing any evidence of the divine, I'm choosing not to see it, you know. When my faith is shattered, or I'm holding on by a tiny thread, for me it's important to remember, because I have spiritual amnesia, that I need to rely on a couple of things. Source. See, for me in that little metaphor, the Land Rover could do it. The Land Rover had the power. The Land Rover had the capacity. And then in fact, days later, we're doing a regular hike, a walking hike, and we get to the top of this really beautiful mountain, you know, and we're at the top, and, you know, a little out of shape, and, you know, did it, you know, nevertheless. And here come mountain bikers, not in a Land Rover, on a two-wheel bicycle. And they come up, you know, to the top, and they're like, easily. And I say to the guy, I'm like, are you gonna get down? You're gonna, like, ride down? And he goes, yeah. I said, how do you do that? How is that possible? He said, well, it depends on the driver. I thought, oh, so, you know, there's got to be some amount of training, too. Some spiritual sadhana, you know, discipline, practice, vigilance. So, like, when I do my meditation, when I do my japa, when I read my japa, you know, the mala beads, and I pray and I meditate, and however fast I do it, and and okay, check it off. I did it, okay, move on. Read my scripture, okay, did that, move on. You see, but it's vigilance for me. It's practice for me. It's training for me. And I just now said in the car to Chris, if I put more effort, wow, I would get well that much faster. See, because I'm not well. I suffer from a disease of the ego. I still believe I am this personality. I still believe I am Grace with this name and these identities. And that's why I'm so afraid to die. And that's why everything else frightens me. But when I remember who I really am, and I go back to that place of the true I am, there's nothing to be afraid of. And see, Linda, who was in the back seat with me, she really got me through it. I tell you, she really did. God bless her, because she kept saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Andrew can do it. He's done it before. And then she proceeds to tell me a story about how they went for actual Land Rover training. Like they took a class on it. And she said, the worst part is over. So I felt like she was like kind of like in my spiritual journey metaphor, she's like a spiritual teacher. We have spiritual preceptors, we have guides, we have each other to encourage each other. See, keep on going. Don't look back. Okay, if you have to hide your face to get through it, it's okay. But keep going, keep climbing, rely on Source. Rely on your spiritual training. Keep practicing. I love the Islamic teaching that says, the scripture that says, the divine is as close as the vein in my neck. I love that. Source is not out there somewhere for me to grasp. Source is here. And faith in that source, and trust in that source. You know, it's like, I actually trusted a vehicle. I'll trust a Land Rover, but I won't trust the divine plan working in my life. Shame on me. See, that's the Catholic. Shame on you. All will be well, I know that, no matter what. That the divine has a plan for me. For me, little me. You know what the divine's plan for little me is? To remember that I'm all that. That I am that already. The divine plan for me is to wake up. Remember. And you know, the best part of it is, you know, in this limited intellect, in my little personality, in all my neurosis, and I have a lot of it. Ask Chris. She'd be happy to share with you all my neurosis. If I don't see it, I don't believe it. Right? I don't see it, I have to see it. You know, like the Jewish people in Israel, right? The Israelites. God would give them something. We love you, God. And then all of a sudden, something bad would happen, and then, where's God? Where's God? Moses, why did you bring us here? Take us back. Call a cab. But the Psalms tell us God will never abandon you. Never abandon you. And you know, that sounds dualistic, I know. Sounds like I'm here and God's there, and God won't abandon me, and I'm separate from God. The Hindu scriptures, and the Vedanta, and the Vedas, and the Upanishads, we're reminded that there's no separateness between me and God. It's not dual, non-dual. I am God. I just forgot. You know, and the Master Jesus also, you know, this wonderful spiritual preceptor that reminds us, why are you continuing to worry? Why are you in fear? What are you afraid of? You're afraid about tomorrow? Afraid you're not going to have enough? Okay, look at the birds. Points to nature and the unfolding divine plan. And yes, sometimes things die. In fact, things die. That's the reality. But there's a rebirth, birth, rebirth. And that's what spring is, right? We're starting to see a lot of the rebirth. Beautiful. So here's the thing for me. I have to be reminded to stay on my path. Right away, when I start getting into fear, I want to turn around, I want to call a cab. When I get into fear, I want to hide my face. But I forget that I have spiritual preceptors, I have guides who are going to encourage me. It's okay. It's okay. And also to encourage me that they went through it too. There's something very powerful in the experience, strength, and hope of other people who tell you it's going to be okay. Yes, I used to suffer with depression and post-traumatic stress. And I got through it. I'm okay. It's okay. I have my days. I have my valley. However, I keep on practicing. Keep on practicing. My sadhana, it's so important. And trusting the source. Because if I don't trust source, if I really forget that source is going to get me through everything, I'm doomed. Forget about it. Don't ask me back here anymore to talk about anything, because then I'm doomed. See, but I know the truth. I know because I've seen source work in my life in the past. And so all of these, not coincidences, but God incidences, these miracles, they're constant miracles. The fact that I'm even standing here is a miracle. It really is. Because there was a time when I suffered with such deep depression that I wanted to die. But I don't have that feeling. That has been cured. That has been relieved. That has been, I'm recovering who I am. Recovering the true nature, my true essence. And then I can share my little messages, of how I get through stuff and the things that I learn. And so that Sedona experience was just absolutely amazing to me. Because fear, and I know you've heard this slogan before, fear is really false evidence appearing real. So there was a lot of false evidence up on that mountain for me. And there's a lot of false evidence that happens in my life every single moment and day to day. But the opposite of that is faith. And the little thing that I came up with here is, face everything and remember. Face everything and remember. So that kind of like, instead of the fear being false evidence appearing real, I can still have the fear, but I can turn it around and face everything. And remember what? Remember who I am, remember source, rely on my spiritual guides and preceptors, and know that all